Going into the first question, Assistant Minister, what is the current situation regarding street kids in different parts of the country as you have visited a few areas already?
First of all, Bula Vijay and Bula Vinaka to the viewers. Yes, things don't look too good. I've been in the West. You could, on an average, see when in early days I was going out, a couple of hundred kids lurking in corners. Some peddling drugs. We went around in private cars and asking for roll, and they offered us ice and meth. And then you're supposed to give a code word, which we didn't know. So, but we went around experiencing some of this. Many of these kids have homes to go back to. So their profiling is a separate issue from the kids who live on the streets. And we've been doing the same in Suva Nosori corridor. Suva Nosori corridor we've profiled. Something like, so between 7 and 14 we have like 11 children, 15 and 35 we have 51, and 36 above to 59 is 35, and 60 above is 15. So these are sort of the age aggregated numbers. We are also seeing a large number of young girls on the street, which was a surprise to me personally. And the way we now operating is we are profiling the smaller ones. We put them in shelter in Lautoka in the Western Division, as well as in Suva. We're putting them in shelter, profiling, and then we're trying to see whether they go into rehabs or go into livelihood programs. And I'm grateful that Ben's team has taken some of our kids in their rehab as well.
And we'll talk further about the breakdown of numbers that the Assistant Minister has shared. Ben Morrison is appearing on Fiji Village Trade Talk. He's doing a lot of work on the ground with his group, a group called Inspire Pacific. Please explain to the people what you've been doing on the ground and the notable issues of concern for you.
Sure. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Vijay, for this opportunity to be on the show. It's an honor and a privilege. It's also an honor and privilege to be alongside Madam Assistant Minister here today. So Inspire Pacific is a vision that was birthed out of a desire to help our children and our young people. We're focused towards youth development, and we believe that investing in our young people is really investing in our future, because of the obviously the influence they will have in our future. So that's sort of what Inspire Pacific is all about in a nutshell. Our primary aim or goal, you could say, is to awaken dreams. So I put up a picture when we share what we do of the Olympics team that won in the Olympic Games, and so I share how they are sort of at the pinnacle of achievement in the global standard of what a Fijian can do in terms of being at the top of especially in the sporting field in rugby, and so that inspires us, and we believe that there is that potential in every young Fijian to not just be able to do something, but awaken a passion and a gift that sets us apart from everyone else in the world. So yeah, that's what Inspire Pacific is about. For the last 4 years, we've chosen to target, we could say, the most marginalized of young people in terms of those who are more at risk and are prone to pro-criminal behavior and in conflict with the law in the juvenile center. We've also worked with some of the boys from the street. Much of our work has been centered around establishing programs within the center to help the ministry and the center, of course, in the rehabilitation of the boys who are there at the center.
Now, Assistant Minister, recent statements have pointed towards the fact that majority of the street kids or youths are coming from broken families or villages and settlements. This is a question for both of you. Can you please shed some light on this, on what are we seeing on the streets?
In Suva and in the West as well, the team first of all says grief and loss. So that means many of the children who may be from broken families living with an aunt or a grandmother who dies, they come onto the streets. Some have talked about abuse by their relatives where they're living, but majority broken families. Few come from good families, and there's conflicts are there on the streets, but majority, that's what we are finding.
Yes, I would absolutely agree, and I think it's only common sense to know that a child needs a family to grow and to develop. So if there's a child that's acting up in some way, obviously you trace the root back to the family. And as Minister's mentioned, when we did the profiling for the young boys we've been working with, it somewhat has we've gotten a feedback of about I think it's pretty much 100% the issue is in the family. To some level or to some extent, and I would take it a step further, that there is a issue in the man of the home taking his role and his position as the father figure, because if you're looking at a family, much of responsibility, you would say, lies with the father. And not to say that the mother has no responsibility, but we are seeing this being highlighted, that a lot of these boys have part of the issue is their relationship with their father. So yes, it's a very interesting
The men have to
issue.
step up to the plate.
Absolutely, yes.
And become role models for their
Yes.
sons growing up.
Yes.
Instead of being absent.
Yes, and we're finding that these boys who are in the center are simply mimicking what they have been shown, and as all children do, a child just does what he sees. And so that's really what we're seeing. We're seeing a replication, sort of a passing on of a mindset that our Fijian men are passing on. And so with that, that's kind of why we are focused into working with boys. We know that there are also girls who come through the system, but we feel like there's a huge need to work with boys, and in that, work with young men in terms of how do they become healthy, supportive, productive citizens, not just now, but also in the future.